Hi, my name is Dr. Kristin Moon, and I wanted to give you some details about the high school chemistry class that I'm offering for FundaFunda Academy. First, I'd like to give you some background about me. So I have an undergraduate degree in microbiology, and I have a PhD in microbiology and molecular genetics. And the goal with those degrees was to continue pursuing a career in lab research. And I did lab research and I had a great time. My focus was on virology, the study of viruses. But when I had my first child, I recognized that my true heart's desire was to be a stay-at-home mom. So I left the lab behind and stayed home with my sons. I have two sons, as you can see in this picture. When it came time to put them in school, we had learned about homeschooling. So I was having so much fun learning with them at home that I decided to homeschool them. And I'm proud to say that I am now a veteran homeschool mom. Both of my boys have graduated from our homeschool. They are now thriving in college and they're both majoring in science fields. As I saw about 3 years ago that my time homeschooling was coming to a close, I was trying to decide what I wanted to do with my degree. And I recognized that what I really loved to do was what I had been doing for the last 20 years, and that was serving the homeschool community by teaching science. So I started my own business, Kristin Moon Science, and on my website, I have a blog. I also have some self-paced online classes, and I also offer live online tutoring. And for the last 2 years, this will be my third year, I am teaching online classes, including the one that I'm teaching for FundaFunda. So what do we do in my chemistry class? What does that look like? Well, this online chemistry class is asynchronous. And what that means is that students do not have to show up for a live class. Instead, each week they log on to their learning platform, which in our case is Canvas, and all of their assignments for the week will be posted on Canvas. So then and I format them so that each week's topics are organized into bite-sized chunks. So they can log on one day and maybe do the first part and then log on another day and do the second part. So it's not so overwhelming, but I organize it this way in a way that makes sense. They can work on chemistry a little bit each day, which truly is the best way to learn chemistry because you're not trying to cram it all in at once. You're practicing a little bit at a time each day, and that makes learning stick. There is no textbook to buy for my class. That's because I don't use a textbook. I know what students need to learn in high school chemistry, and I provide my own resources for the students. Now, I understand that there are students who do learn best by reading, and for those students, I do post links to the CK12 free online chemistry textbook. I post the links for the passages that correspond to whatever we're learning. So a student is able to read the content that we're covering if they choose to, but it's not required. I do provide instructions for labs. Most of the labs can be done with items that the student can find at a grocery store. There are some items that a student will likely need to purchase from an outside vendor, including graduated cylinders, a thermometer, and a mass scale, but they're not cost prohibitive. And I take care of all of the grading. So what do we cover in this class? We cover it all. We cover all of the topics that are taught in a high school chemistry class, and we get really far into the material. We start off the year making sure we're solid on the math needed for chemistry, that we understand accuracy and precision, how to take measurements, how to read and report measurements. We talk about units, what units are, how we can convert between units, and then we head on into chemistry. We talk about chemical and physical properties and chemical and physical changes. We talk about the atom. We learn all about atomic structure and ions. We learn about electrons and where they live inside an atom, and we learn about valence electrons and electron configuration. We move into chemical bonding and learn about the different types of bonds. We spend some time learning about the periodic table and how it is organized. And I teach students how to navigate and get all sorts of information just by looking at the periodic table. We talk about the 5 different types of chemical reactions, and students learn how to recognize the different types of reactions and how to write a formula or a balanced chemical equation relating to each of the 5 types of chemical reactions. We talk about the mole We talk about stoichiometry. Then after the first semester, when we get into the second semester, we move on to solutions and acids and bases and the gas laws. We talk about reaction rates, kinetics, and chemical equilibrium. We talk about redox reactions and nuclear chemistry. And I know it may sound like a lot and it may sound overwhelming, but the way the class is taught, I teach it at a gentle pace. Every topic builds upon the one before it. I lay a firm foundation, and by the end of the year, students are absolutely amazed at all that they have been able to learn. I make sure to include lots of hands-on activities. Some of the activities and labs are required, and then additionally, I offer extra activities for students that just want to do it all, just want to get their hands into some chemistry. I provide those opportunities too. When we're talking about solutions, students make their own saturated solution of sugar water, and in doing so, create rock candy crystals. When we're talking about electrons and electron configurations, they are given the opportunity to heat different elements that they may already have around their house in a flame to see what color flame those elements produce. This flame that you're seeing right here, that's the color of a flame produced by copper. When we're talking about acids and bases, they make a pH indicator and they investigate items around their house to find out which items are acids and which are bases. When we're talking about redox reactions and single displacement reactions, students are given the opportunity to find a piece of tarnished silver somewhere in their house and use chemistry to polish their silver. I am a big believer in making every topic that a student is learning relate to their everyday life. Because if a student doesn't understand why they're learning something, they're going to tune you out. And I don't want that to happen. So I always search for ways that students can understand how what we're learning relates to everyday life. So for example, we learn about calorimetry. We learn why we eat food. Yes, food tastes good, and that's why we eat it. But biologically, we eat food for its energy. Where is that energy found? It's found in the chemical bonds between the molecules of that food. So we learn about that. When we're talking about electron configurations and atomic structure, we learned that that has everything to do with how fireworks get their color. We learn why we have carbon monoxide detectors in our house and catalytic converters on our car. It has to do with combustion reactions, which is one of the 5 types of chemical reactions. So students learn why these things exist in their real life and how it relates to the chemistry we're learning. There are lots of assignments that I give the students so that they can apply the concepts that they're learning. There's lots of math. So all that math that your students been learning up until now, they actually get a chance to apply it in a meaningful way. They get lots of practice using a scientific calculator. I find that lots of students come even to my chemistry class and they're unfamiliar with how to use a scientific calculator. They think that they can get away with just using the calculator on their phone or on their computer. But guess what? If a student goes to take a college entrance exam, like a placement test or the SAT or the ACT, they're not going to be able to use their phone calculator and they're not going to be able to use the calculator on their computer. They're going to have to be able to use a scientific calculator. And the same thing happens when they go on to college. They need to know how to use a scientific calculator. So I give them lots of practice using a scientific calculator, and I am perfectly fine. And I encourage them to use their scientific calculator all throughout the class. But I actually spend some time in those first few weeks demonstrating how to enter numbers in scientific notation into their scientific calculator and how to use their scientific calculator. So that comes in handy. Another thing about my class, homework is graded for completion. So what that means is a student, as long as they turn their homework in and it's done, they get 100% for that assignment. I don't take away points for wrong answers on their homework. And the reason why is because I really want them to do their homework. And I don't want a fear that they don't understand or that they're going to get something wrong to keep them from practicing the material. This isn't to say that I don't grade their homework, because I do. I look at all of their homework. If they've gotten a problem wrong, I give them feedback and I share how they could get it right. And I sometimes will create a video of myself walking through a problem if many of my students have a problem, are getting that one wrong. But they don't have to worry that I'm going to mark them wrong for doing their homework incorrectly. And the students conduct 2 projects for me during the course of the year. At the end of the first semester, they do a report on an element of their choosing. So any of the 118 elements from the periodic table, they choose what element they want to research, and then they do some research. I have a list of things I want them to tell me. How many protons does it have? What's its atomic mass? Is it a metal or is it a non-metal? Where is it found in nature? Is it man-made or is it a natural element? All sorts of things. But if they answer those questions, they are welcome to present the material to me in any way they choose. They can do a slideshow. They can do an animation. They can do a 3D project. They can write a paragraph. And then at the end of the second semester, so at the end of the year, after they've learned all there is to know about high school chemistry, then they do a report on a molecule that they use in everyday life. So by this time, they understand how atoms come together to form molecules and the different properties molecules may have. And so I want them to choose any molecule that they use in everyday life and tell me about it. So on the screen right now, I'm showing you some samples from my students this last year. One of my students did a report on acetone. Several of my students did reports on caffeine, and I learned a lot about caffeine that I didn't know from my students. And another one of my students did a report on petroleum. So I hope that that's given you some idea of how my class is organized. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'm happy to answer them for you.